morning, cherished viewers. This is your GRA TV, your trusted source of all information that relate to tax payment in Ghana or tax administration generally. As you may know, or as it's easily said, ignorance of the law is no excuse. It is never an excuse. GRA, that is the Ghana Revenue Authority, is the statutory or mandated organization that administers tax in the country, or that mobilizes tax revenue for the development of our country, Ghana. GRA does so on a number of tax laws. We have a mosaic of tax laws that are administered by the Commissioner General of GRA. You may know all of them or you may not. And even where you know all the taxes, you may not be aware of how the provisions are interpreted. The discussion today is going to look at the interpretation of the Penalties and Interest Waiver Act of 2021, Act 1065. I hope that you have a good time, relax, and listen to the discussion. Joining me for today's discussion, I have on my right Mr. Joseph Fiajo. Mr. Joseph Fiajo is a seasoned tax practitioner. He works with the GRA. He is an auditor with the Petroleum Unit of the Ghana Revenue Authority, that is the Direct Tax, Domestic Tax Revenue Division. He is an adjunct lecturer at the GRA Training School. Am I right?
You're right.
Good. And I understand you are a chartered accountant, a member of the Chartered Institute of Accountants Ghana, right? Mr. Fiajo, you are welcome.
Thank you, Eric.
On my left is another chartered accountant. I understand you are a member of the Chartered Institute of Ghana, Accountants Ghana, right?
Yeah.
And a budding lawyer. Okay, this is Mr. Baba Idrisu. Mr. Baba Idrisu is with the Tax Audit and Quality Assurance Unit of the Ghana Revenue Authority. And gentlemen, you are very, very welcome to this interesting program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Good, good. How are you all?
Fine.
Doing very well.
Good, good. So I would like to start with you, Mr. Baba Idrisu. We have heard of the waivers and waiver of interest and penalties as proposed in the government budget and the fiscal policy for 2021, right? And that has seen the light of day in the act itself, right? Now, when we say a penalty or interest, do we mean the same thing? Is it merely semantics or they are different? And if they're different, how different are they? And how do they arise?
Thank you so much. The context in which we are looking at this discussion is tax penalty, tax interest. The two are not the same. They are not the same as far as we have different provisions regulating their administration. But looking at what they are or what they mean. Penalty. When we talk about tax penalty, we are looking at a mandatory punishment that is imposed on a person, this person being a taxpayer, who has acted or failed to act. And this action or inaction constitutes a contravention or a breach of a specific provision in the law. So in this particular instance, we are looking at the mandatory punishment that is imposed on the person by acting or not acting in accordance with the law. And these penalties are at all times specified because they are not left to the discretion of the person implementing it or enforcing it. The tax law will specify a penalty that should be imposed in the event that a certain provision is violated or breached.
Yes, so we have just said that there are a plethora of tax laws. By saying tax law, are you referring to a particular one or generally all the tax laws?
See, GRA administers a lot of taxes, and most of these taxes are governed by different acts. So when we talk about the tax law, we are talking about all tax laws or acts that are administered by the Commissioner General.
Okay.
Authority.
Okay.
And on interest.
Yes.
Interest, and even to add a little on the penalty. The penalties usually operate when a person either fails to file a return, or maybe the person is required to produce a certain information or certain record which that person fails to. So when it comes to interest is...
Before you go on, does the failure, as you have just described, including failure of tax payment? Because you have mentioned that where there's a failure, in filing a tax return, right, or failure to submit some information required of you, I was curious, I was expecting to hear failure to pay tax. Am I right if I said that?
Yes,
Okay.
failure to pay tax can trigger a penalty.
Okay.
It depends on which provision is at play.
Okay.
Because if we look at the Revenue Administration Act, Section 74, provide for an instance where there is a shortfall in the payment of tax, what penalty to apply.
Okay.
But the most interesting thing about it is that that particular section has been amended by the enactment of the Act 1029,
Okay.
the Income Tax Amendment Act,
Okay.
which provides that where a person voluntarily discloses certain information which were not
Otherwise,
included,
okay.
then that person will be relieved of any penalty that will arise as a result of that.
Okay, that's fine. So let's move to the interest.
So on the interest, mainly when we're looking at the tax interest, our focus is on a charge that is made, in this case, additional charge that is made on a person who fails to make a payment of tax to the Commissioner General. In this particular instance, we are looking at where Commissioner General was supposed to have access to a certain fund by way of tax. And by virtue of the person's failure to honor his obligation, the Commissioner General is denied that particular amount. And when that happens, then the interest provision will be triggered.
Yeah, but you have said that where the person is supposed to make some funds available to the Commissioner General,
Yes.
right, and the person fails to do that, that would result in an interest, right? What if you didn't mention any timelines attached to that? So it means that if I know I owe the Commissioner General some taxes, I could decide, okay, I'll pay in December, or I'll pay next year. I mean, the intention and the willingness to pay is there. But you didn't indicate whether there should be a timeline upon which when it lapses, then interest arises. I want you to clarify
So the difference
that.
is this. Every tax that a person is supposed to pay is determined by, or maybe the time by which a person is supposed to make a payment of tax is determined in the Act.
Okay.
The Act will specifically indicate at what point are you supposed to pay this particular tax.
Okay.
And we
So
usually
for
refer to the
instance,
tax period.
So for instance, you're saying that if I'm supposed to pay my PAYE,
Exactly.
I have to pay it on a particular date.
On a specified
Date. So if that date elapses and I haven't paid, then you are...
the interest will start being charged. And the relevant sections in the Revenue Administration Act has prescribed how an interest is to be charged.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fiajo,
Yeah.
would you have anything to add? Otherwise, let me ask you, prior to the promulgation of this Act 1065, right, that is the Penalty Interest Waiver Act, how was the GRA treating interest and payments? Mr. Fiajo, can you speak to this?
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Prior to the passage of the Penalties and Interest Waiver Act 2021 Act 1065, penalties were being imposed by the GRA. Penalties under the tax laws, with the passage of the Revenue Administration Act 2016, Act 915, the penalties were harmonized. But then, some tax laws, if you take communication service tax, for instance, retains its specific penalty regime, but others have been harmonized in that if you fail to submit a return, the very day that the date elapses, you are charged a penalty of 500 Ghana cedis. And if the returns is not submitted, any other day that the returns is left unsubmitted, you incur 10 cedis in addition to the 500. So let's take it that you were to submit PAYE returns.
Just a quick one.
Yes.
You keep saying returns.
Yeah.
Can you give
Tax
just one line? Well, tax return. Can you just give one statement, one sharp statement to tell my cherished viewers what that return is?
Oh, a return is just information furnished by the taxpayer to the Commissioner General regarding his tax liability or tax status.
Or matters that relate to that. So it's essentially a prescribed information.
Yes.
Presented on a prescribed form.
Yes.
By the Commissioner General, right?
Yes.
And then demanding certain information from you periodically.
Yes.
Or
yes.
Okay.
To be furnished.
Okay.
Periodically, it could be monthly.
Okay.
And it could be yearly.
Okay. Or quarterly.
Okay.
Yes. So if you don't file that on the due date, then you have failed in filing a return.
Yes.
That's fine. That's fine. Please go ahead.
So a penalty is imposed on you by the GRA.
Okay.
Let's say PAYE returns. You have to file PAYE returns by the 15th day of the month following the month that it relates to. Let's say PAYE returns for the month of August is to be paid by the 15th of September.
Okay.
If you don't file by the 15th of September, you incur a penalty of 500
Ghana cedis.
500 Ghana cedis.
Okay. Wow.
And on the 16th, if the returns is left unsubmitted, you incur additional penalty of 10 cedis. Okay. So on the day that you're supposed to file, if you don't file, you incur penalty of 500 Ghana cedis. And any other day in addition attracts 10 cedis.
Good. So this means that whether the return is a monthly return,
Yes.
or a quarterly return,
Yes.
or an annual return.
Yes.
Do you have a biannual return? I'm not sure.
Returns, no.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter whether it's an annual return, a monthly return, or a quarterly return.
Yeah.
You still incur the same range. You
Yeah.
have still incurred the same range of penalties, right? But for the
I must be quick to say though that when it comes to communication service tax, if you fail to submit your returns by the last working day of the month following the month of collection, you incur a penalty of 2,000 Ghana cedis.
Okay.
And each day that the returns is left unsubmitted, you incur additional penalty of 500 Ghana cedis.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So my understanding is that the longer you default,
Yes.
right, the higher your potential penalties that are supposed to be paid.
That's
That
right.
is under before the promulgation of this act.
That's right.
Okay. So what I have gathered now is you are telling my viewers that there are responsibilities under the tax laws, right? And those responsibilities include filing of a return,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And payment of taxes, right?
Yes.
And submission of requested information,
Yeah.
if I got you right.
Yeah.
And if you failed to do any of these, you would have paid penalties, or penalties would have been computed on your failure, right? Thank you very much. I think that's a fantastic observation. Baba, penalties and interest, well explained. Now, are we saying that when we pay penalties and interest, we can claim them when we are determining our chargeable income? When you look at the section 2 of the revenue, at 896, it talks about chargeable income, and it looks at a total of all your accessible income from business, employment, and investment, less deductions allowed under that act. Can I, because this is a genuine business expense, if I should call it, forgive me, but I see it as a legitimate expense. Can I take it off? Can I deduct it from my records before I arrive at my chargeable income?
No, you cannot deduct penalties, tax penalties, and tax interest in arriving at your chargeable income, because the Income Tax Act provides that where an expense or a payment is an excluded expenditure,
Okay.
it should not be allowed as a deductible expense in arriving at the chargeable income. And looking at tax penalty and tax interest, they qualify as excluded expenditure under the section 130 of the income.
So you are saying that the law, the Act 896, specifically prescribes that or provides that persons determining their chargeable income cannot
deduct.
But I'm just struggling to appreciate this. I'm supposed to pay tax. I had a struggle, a few issues with my finances. I couldn't pay, and maybe I had 2 or 3, or let's say months in default. And you have asked me to pay penalty. I mean, it's all within the business, environment. And you are saying I cannot deduct that from my expenditure. I mean, from my records before I pay tax. I don't know, but I think that probably, I don't know how you react to this, but I think that taxpayers should have been allowed to deduct.
No, that is not the case.
I like the way Mr. Fiajo is smiling. Maybe you want to add something?
I want to add something to
You see, under the law, penalties are seen as avoidable payments to the Commissioner General or avoidable taxes as prescribed under the Revenue Administration Act.
Okay.
Section 9 of the Revenue Administration Act puts it or provides that penalties, interest are taxes. So when you look at penalties are avoidable.
Okay.
You see, the fact that you fail to submit your returns means that you are incurring an avoidable cost.
Okay. So penalty coming from the word punitive.
Yes.
It's supposed to give you a little pain for defaulting.
Yes.
So if the Commissioner General comes back to allow it, it means that where is the efficacy of that pain?
Giving you of the pain
that is what you are saying.
Right.
So it is not healthy to even wait for the penalty to look for you, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Right.
I think that's a fantastic point to me.
Yeah.
So at 1065, Joseph Fiajo,
Yes.
has the DRA started the implementation?
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
With the passage of the Act 1065, the Commissioner has been empowered to grant waiver of penalties and interest to persons out there, provided they fulfill some conditions under the penalties and interest.
When did the Commissioner General start the implementation? When did the DRA start it?
Okay, the implementation actually started from 1st April this year.
Oh, that is
2021.
Okay. So is it forever? Are we going to enjoy it for some time, or it's supposed to end? Is it going to end? And if so, when?
The law prescribes a deadline, that is 30th of September. In fact, the end of this month, 30th of September, within which a person who owes tax or debt, or who is in tax debt up to 31st December 2020 to file returns and make satisfactory arrangement to pay the tax debt by 31st of December 2021. In fact, this year.
So Joe, let me take it off your mouth,
Yeah.
and help my cherished viewers to get it very well.
Yes.
From what you have said,
Yeah.
let me ask you again.
Yes.
Who are the persons qualified to benefit from this amnesty or this waiver? Who are they?
Yes. It could be a registered taxpayer. It could be unregistered taxpayer.
And if they are taxpayers,
Yeah.
are you looking at a segment of the taxpaying public, let's say limited liability companies alone, or individuals, and again, are you looking at the whole country, or you are looking at just the urban centers, or you are looking at the rural areas as well, or you are looking at even Ghanaians who are residents outside the country? What is the scope? I mean, can you speak to that?
Right. Thank you, Eric. The interest and penalty waiver cuts across all shades of taxes or all taxpayers who avail themselves, provided you file by the 30th of September, you could be granted.
That's fine. Baba, you want to add anything to that?
Yes.
We are talking about the scope
Exactly.
of persons who are eligible to take advantage of this amnesty. Joseph just mentioned that you have already started as far back as April 1, and you are ending, or it's ending on the 30th of September. So if you can have a good quality message for my viewers as to who would qualify to take advantage of this amnesty. If you can.
So what happens is that if you have not already registered with the Ghana Revenue Authority, you can take advantage of that because there is a penalty for failure to register with the Ghana Revenue Authority. If you come under the new Penalties and Interest Waiver Act, you will relieve yourself or you will be absolved from the penalty that will be imposed for failure to register. So in this case,
does it really matter the volume of penalty? If it's too huge, I mean, penalty is penalty. Somebody may have defaulted for just a week or let's say a month,
yes,
and the person receives a pardon. What of somebody who has defaulted for years? I mean, since I started my business as far back as 5 years ago, I have never even stepped foot on any GRA grounds or entered any GRA office before. I mean, you agree with me that the weight of those two defaulting circumstances are not the same. Are you saying that it doesn't matter? It's like salvation. It doesn't matter your sin. You will still receive salvation. Is that what you're saying?
You see, what is driving this whole agenda is to ensure that we increase voluntary compliance. And this is in accordance with the second goal of the GRA strategic plan. It says that, fine, when we waive these penalties or interest, it is capable of enhancing voluntary compliance. And that is why we are pursuing that strategy. Right? And coming back to the other persons that qualify, you could have registered with GRA, all right, but you would have been, in default in terms of filing your tax returns. You could have been late in filing your tax returns, or you could have underpaid in making the payments that are due as far as the tax is concerned. So that's what I can say as far as the scope of and coverage of this particular act is concerned.
So if I got you, you are saying that if I have not registered with the GRA at all,
Yes.
one, or even if I have ever registered with the GRA, but I'm in default in terms of filing my returns, right? Or I am owing a tax liability,
Yes.
right? Am I right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
if I happen to fall within any of these three categories, I could ask for the waiver.
Exactly.
That's interesting. I think that's good news. So do I have to fulfill a set of conditions before I can assess the benefit? Like I'm owing, I have a substantive tax liability there, and then the penalty is imposed thereon. And just as you've said, is there any condition precedent? Do I have to do anything? Do I have to satisfy a clause or a condition before I can assess the waiver? Joe, can you speak to that?
Okay. First, the Penalties and Interest Waiver Act gives a cut-off point. That cut-off point is tax debts or any tax owed up to 31st December 2020. Now, anybody who owes a tax debt or tax or even interest and penalties up to the cut-off date of 31st December 2020, if that person makes satisfactory arrangement, or first of all, before the satisfactory arrangement, you should have submitted application. The Commissioner General has in place a prescribed form.
No, Mr. President, before you come to the submission
Yes.
application,
Yes.
do I have to feel that I actually qualify before I put in my application? By providing a set of conditions. Let's say you are telling me that then pay all your taxes, then file all your returns, then or come and see the Commissioner General in the morning in the office at 7 o'clock or whatever. There should be some conditions, or once I just file the returns, I want us to have.
Okay, yes. Before the conditions, the taxpayers out there must understand that there's a cut-off date. Okay. With a cut-off date being 31st December 2020.
Okay.
What a taxpayer is required to do is to approach any GRA office, pick the prescribed form on which penalties and an interest waiver is to be applied, the prescribed form. When you pick the prescribed form, you are to submit such an application by the 30th of September 2021. And then as part of the application submission, you are to make satisfactory arrangement to pay your tax debt by 31st of December this year, 2021. And then, as part of the conditions too, you are to submit all your tax returns, make all your tax payments up to 31st December 2020.
Okay, but let me go to Baba. Baba, Fiona is saying that I should have paid all my taxes by 31st December.
Yes.
But you just said that the amnesty ends on the 30th of September. Can you clarify this? I mean, I thought that if I applied for the amnesty, right, on or before the 30th of September, then maybe Commissioner General would have required me to pay all my taxes, left with the penalty, then I'm granted the penalty, waiver of the penalties on interest thereon, right? That's what I thought. Does it stretch to December 31st? Baba?
December 31st of 2021? No.
Good.
It only ends at December 31st, 2020. And this has to do with all returns.
So what I said is that my tax liability or all tax matters that led to the determination of that substantive tax upon which the interest and penalty has been imposed or arisen, which we are talking of now.
Yes.
That whole taxes should have related to the period to 31st December 2020.
2020, yes.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
So now, you see, first of all, let's look at how do these liabilities arise? They can arise as a result of GRA's assessment. And they could also be as a result of the taxpayer's self-disclosure. So, in the conditions, what it's saying is that if it has to do with the taxpayer's self-disclosure, then we can make sure that all returns that were supposed to have been filed and paid for up to the 31st December 2020 will have done that.
Okay.
And or
before the end of September
before the
2021.
end of September 30th, 2021.
Yes. Okay.
And what it says is that if any liability comes as a result of the self-disclosure, we should have paid or made the necessary arrangement to pay. And this necessary arrangement to pay, we are looking at payment should have been made by the 31st December 2021. Right?
Okay.
Now, when it comes to Commissioner General's assessment, or maybe GRA's assessment, in this case, we are looking at either by compliance visit or maybe by audit visit. The assessment that is raised and the interest that accompanies it, or penalties, it says that make the necessary arrangements to pay the principal liability by 31st December 2021. And when that is met, then the interest or penalty that were assessed will be waived. That's when all other conditions are met.
Okay. Thank you very much, Baba. Okay, so Joseph, I'm coming back to you. You have mentioned a range of conditions that are supposed to be met. And you have gone on to say that I need to go to the tax office and pick a prescribed form and complete in a bid to apply for the waiver. Good. Now, if I'm in my home or in my office and I feel that I've met all the conditions. I've sent a check, or I've gone to, now I hear you are cashless now. So I've made the necessary arrangement, I've paid, I've filed all the returns. Do I grant myself the benefit of the amnesty, or I mean my office, or I still have to necessarily go for the form and apply? And again, let me add another question. If I don't have the benefit of the form, can I just write a letter to the Commissioner General, address a letter to the Commissioner General stating indicating my request? Would that suffice? Would that be enough? So 2 questions in one. Joseph, can you speak to that?
Okay. Under the Penalties and Interest Waiver Act, the Commissioner General has been given the power to determine the manner in which one can avail himself to the Penalties and Interest Waiver. That manner is a prescribed form that Commissioner General has in place. So you don't have to sit at home and write. Before the form, my understanding is that some people wrote, but after some time, they called them and gave them the prescribed form. And I can assure you that the form is online on the GRA's website.
Is it easy to get a form?
Yes, it is.
It's not everybody who is
GRA's website, gra.gov.gh. One can access the form.
How much is the form? How much do I have to pay for the form?
It costs absolutely nothing.
Oh, it's free?
It's free.
Oh, great.
It's free. So one must download the form and fill, or get to the nearest GRA office and pick the form and complete it and submit.
So viewers, we are saying that you necessarily have to complete the form.
Yes.
At the application form for your interest and penalties to be waived off by the Commissioner General. And you couldn't have just written a letter to the Commissioner General and then just sit back and believe that it will be waived. That's what you have said.
Yes.
Right. Thank you very much. Baba, I'm back to you again.
Okay.
Are there persons who do not, or who would not, or who should not, or who shall never qualify for the waiver?
No, there are no persons, but it only will depend on the type of returns for which these interests and penalties are being sought to be waived. If it has to do with returns that are supposed to have been filed from 1st January 2021, then default in such returns will not qualify you for the waiver of the interest and penalty. What I mean therefore is that if you default in filing these returns from 2021, the Interest and Penalty Waiver Act does not cover those returns.
Okay, so as you earlier said, it's the whole discussion is about taxes that relate to the period up to 31st December 2020.
Yes.
So if the tax being discussed, or the tax upon which the penalty or interest has arisen, right, relates to any time after 1st January, or any time on or after 1st January 2021, you wouldn't qualify for this amnesty. Okay, I think that's an interesting point to make. Yes. So if I am not in the country, I'm outside the country, and I want to take advantage. I have a business here, but I've flown out of the country for some reason, and I have a business here, and I want to take advantage of the amnesty. What's your advice to me?
Yes. So what happens is that, as Mr. Fialo mentioned, that you can access the application form on GRA website. That's www.gra.gov.
Can you state that again? Can you make it?
You can access it on the GRA website, which is www.gra.gov.gh.
www, the W's are 3, right?
3, yes.
Dot
GRA,
also 3. Dot gov.
yes.
That is also 3.
Yes.
Dot
GH.
Dot gh. I mean, this should be easy for us to capture, right?
Yes.
So when you get in there and access the form, all you have to do is to complete the form you can scan the form. You know which tax office you file your tax returns. You can send it to the respective office. And fortunately, all the offices now have their designated email addresses. And there are officers that are designated to be in charge of these email addresses. So when that is sent into that email, an officer will pick it and carry out the vetting process. But to ensure that you get it properly done, you would have found a representative who would have, served GRA with the necessary document that is supposed to be attached to the application form. The reason is that when you make the application, or when you send your application, GRA does not take a decision solely on the strength of the information contained in the application. We subject it to vetting. And officers will do detailed computation to verify the assertions or the amounts you have put in your application. So when that happens, then that is where the Commissioner General or GRA will be satisfied that you have duly met the conditions that are necessary for the grant of the waiver of the interest.
And interestingly, since if there's a need for you to pay some substantive tax liability, right? Since GRA has gone cashless, it means that even when I'm cooling off right there in Texas, I could still make payments. It doesn't matter where. That's interesting. Viewers, I think at this point we want to go for a commercial break. This is your DRA TV, your trusted source of all tax information. And you can always access our discussions for quality tax education. Thank you.
Paying your taxes and duties have become much easier. You can now pay through these participating banks on ghana.gov. Visit gra.gov.gh for more information. Ghana Revenue Authority. Our taxes, our future.
Viewers, you are welcome. We are back to your favorite program on the GRA TV. That is the Time with the Tax Law. And as we earlier said, today we are discussing the interpretation of the Penalties and Interest Waiver Act at 1065. And the experts, the tax practitioners who have joined me today in discussing the topic, Baba Idriso and Joseph Fiado, and we are back to continue our discussion. So I'll start with you, Joseph. Joseph, when a person applies for the waiver, how long does that person need to wait or have to wait to get a feedback?
Thank you, Eric. The Penalties and Interest Waiver Act of 2021 at 1065 gives 30 days within which Commissioner General must respond to an application submitted by an applicant. Now, if the applicant has not heard from the Commissioner General within 30 days, he can complain in a written form within 30 days. So for emphasis, we're saying that when you apply, you just have to relax and wait for 30 days within which Commissioner General must respond. If, however, he does not respond within the 30 days, you also have 30 days within which to make your complaint.
Okay. Thank you, Joseph. Baba, yes. Joseph has just said that, we all heard him, that within 30 days, you should have heard from the Commissioner General in terms of the feedback to your application. Yes, the question is, we have already said that the whole amnesty term ends on the 30th of September 2021. So if I am to apply today, 30 days would have been over the set or the cutoff point. So if after 30 days, which is way outside the time frame, what can I do? What's your advice?
If the Commissioner General does not respond, as you mentioned, 30 days, he's supposed to respond within 30 days. If that does not work out, or if you have not heard anything from the Commissioner General, the same law that is being administered by the Commissioner General confers a right on you to deem his non-response as a decision that is not favorable to you. For that matter, you want to object. Because a decision taken by the Commissioner General to grant or not to grant you a waiver of the interest or penalty is a tax decision. Right? So if the 30 days elapse and you don't hear from them, you deem it so and then you object to that.
Let me find out from you. You have given an indication that if the person, the applicant, hasn't heard from the Commissioner General, there is an underlying presumption that my application or his application has been declined. Otherwise, how would I know that my application has been successful or has been declined? Am I going to be written to, or am I going to be given a phone call? How is it done?
Yes.
Yeah.
What determines whether an approval has been given to an application is when the interest and waiver certificate is issued to the taxpayer. Then that will show that the person's application has been approved. But where it is not given, and that's where we'll come to issues of raising concern, either complaining, and after the complaint, if the Commissioner General takes a decision and the taxpayer is not satisfied with it, then he proceeds to a higher level, in this case, that is the court.
Let me ask. I mean, I have checked my records. I have listened to your program, interesting program, Time with the Tax Law. I've taken note of all the things that have been said. I feel that I qualify for this amnesty. I've applied to the Commissioner General. I didn't get a response. After 30 days, I have written to the Commissioner General. I've objected, and I didn't get any response. What is your advice to me then? Especially when I have not received. You mentioned that there is going to be a waiver certificate, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what am I supposed to do if I have not received a waiver certificate at that point? Do I have to go and then pay the penalty, or I still have some other options available to me?
You can always make a follow-up. It's human institution. There can be some bit of delay as far as the processes are concerned. So you can make a follow-up. And we have always said, the GRA is your friend. Any office that you walk into, you have the client service department, the client service section and all that. They will, meet you, address your concerns, or escalate it if they are not able to do so. But what we have to do here is that the taxpayer should know that at any point when they are completing the application forms, they should do it diligently, because that can also contribute in reducing the time that will be spent in processing the form.
Okay.
Where you are required to attach a schedule, attach the right schedule, so that when it gets in there, the vetting officers will not spend so much time in processing your application. That's just by way of note, so that if taxpayers are engaging or carrying out this application, they will get their application processed within the shortest possible time.
That's interesting. Mr. Peter, do you want to add anything to what you said?
Yes, just to add to what Baba has said so far. The GRA has adopted the friendly or the compliance approach to tax administration, as opposed to the adversarial and then the enforcement kind of administration. So just like any tax administration out there, there's a paradigm shift to friendly and then a compliance approach. So if at any point in time you feel that your application is not being attended, nothing stops you from approaching a GRA office to inquire or to ask of the status of your application.
Okay.
Rather than going
Yeah.
the strict official way. You could inquire before you write or proceed to any court of law.
Okay. So, Mr. Fiayo,
Yeah.
let me ask you, what will make the Commissioner General decline such an application?
Well, there could be various reasons.
Okay. So, can you share
One was what Baba just mentioned, that probably you've not attached the right schedule, you've not provided the right information, or you applied outside the cut-off period, or you've not made satisfactory arrangements that are acceptable to the Commissioner General. Baba may want to add something.
Baba, when you say satisfactory arrangement, you wanted to add something before?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead, that's fine.
See, he mentioned that when the application is made outside the cut-off period, that would be a reasonable ground for the Commissioner General to refuse the person's application. We can also add that where the application is made within the stipulated time, that is the 30th September. However, at the time the person made the application, there were still some outstanding returns that were supposed to have been filed. And even these returns could have been returns that are subsequent to the 31st December 2020, right? Because they are all the necessary conditions that must be met for a grant of that waiver. So just to add to what Mr. Fiayo said, the returns must be filed up to date. And when returns subsequent to the 31st December 2020 are made, you are giving the Commissioner General or the GRA an assurance that you are ready to comply going forward. Because the purpose for the waiver was to ensure that we increase voluntary compliance.
That's interesting. Viewers, this is your favorite program, Time with the Tax War, on GRA TV. And what Baba has just said is that there is the likelihood that your application for the waiver of interest and penalty may be declined by the Commissioner General on certain conditions. One, you could have applied, but if you have not filed all the requisite returns, you are likely to lose it. Or if you have not paid all the substantive outstanding tax liability, you are likely to fail. Or you have not made a satisfactory arrangement, then you are likely to lose that application or have it declined. Mr. Fiayo, when you say, let me even ask Baba, I just ended with you, let me come back to you. When you say a satisfactory arrangement, what does that mean? Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, what it means is that, usually taxpayers may have difficulties when it comes to cash flows. So when we talk about a satisfactory arrangement, what we mean here is that the taxpayer engages the GRA, and that's in this case either the TSC or the CEDM. Then have an arrangement with them to reschedule the debt that is outstanding, such that they will not feel the pinch so much when they are making such payments. And by what the law says, it says that this rescheduling can be done up to the 31st December of 2021. So that is what we mean by making the necessary arrangement. And in this particular instance, it can be by way of bank guarantees or bank overdraft. Because in this particular instance, that is what will give us enough assurance
Confidence, okay.
that is that there will be value for whatever we have granted. Because if it had to be with the old regime where we had to be receiving checks and all that, we faced instances where you would receive a check and that check will not be honored by the bank. In that case, we are going around the tax debt,
So in effect, it's better now that GRA has gone cashless. So it's a matter of just talking to your bankers who already have access to your money, giving them some standing orders, and then taking evidence to the Commissioner General, then you are good to go. So within the confines of this satisfactory arrangement, am I able to ask for let's say a year or more time in paying the liability even after the 31st December 2021, as you did indicate earlier on?
Well,
is it possible? Is there
under the
within the confines of this
under the Penalties and Interest Waiver Act, 31st December has been given as the deadline. However, the same act, 1065, provides that the act or the provisions do not take away the right of the commissioner to waive or remit taxes under the various laws. So it's up to the Commissioner General, but the emphasis is 31st December 2021 is the deadline for making all the satisfactory arrangements for the payment of any tax.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, Baba, let me come back to you. Within all these discussions, I have applied and then I have received a feedback that my application has been declined. Do I have a right to objection, especially if the period of amnesty hasn't elapsed? Can I object?
Yes, you can object, but that objection will not be objection in a strict sense.
Okay.
Because the Act has provided the steps that you should take before you get to the real objection.
Okay.
So that when you are informed that your application has been rejected, what you should do should be to complain to the Commissioner General. And maybe in response to this your complaint, you would have known the reasons or the rationale for the rejection. If it is such that you can remedy it, you do so. But you may not want to jump straight into triggering the objection process. As provided for in the Act 1064, that's the Interest and Penalty Waiver Act, it says that complain to Commissioner General.
Complain to Commissioner General. Interesting. Commissioner General is the same person who has declined my application. So, are we not going, having a merry-go-round?
That's why when the complaint is made, the Commissioner General is aware of internal control processes in the handling of matters. When the complaint is made, the officers that handled the application in the first instance may not be the same officer that will look at it when the complaint comes in. Right? So that will kind of be a self-review within the GRA cycle. So that is what that means. So when it comes in, the Commissioner General, in his own wisdom, will appoint or designate different officers to handle it. So they will come in with different perspectives, especially if it has to do with either application of certain provisions in the tax law.
Interesting. Mr. Ferdio, so you have written, I don't want to use the word objection, but let's say you've gone back to the Commissioner General to review your case, right? And then the revision is done, and unfortunately, you failed to succeed again. What happens? Are you supposed to go and pay the penalties then?
Well,
at that point, when all hope is lost, the amnesty period is still there anyway, but unfortunately, you couldn't qualify.
well, as a taxpayer or a prospective taxpayer, if you are sure that you've done the right thing, but the outcome is unfavorable,
No, there are two sets here.
Yes.
One is how you feel. You feel that you've done the right thing. And the arbiter, that being the Commissioner General, says no, this one doesn't qualify.
Yeah.
I understand. But quite clearly, there is evident that indeed they've even given a justification why your application has been declined. You yourself, you are convinced that it's been declined. What do? Do you have to go and pay the
in that case, you have to pay.
Okay, viewers,
penalty.
the
interest.
Viewers, Mr. Fiajo is saying that once it is clear, abundantly clear, that unfortunately you didn't qualify for the waiver, you need to pay. Fortunately, now GRA has gone cashless, so it's easy to pay from wherever you are. You don't need to walk to the office to get paid. But The point is that you earlier made the point that taxpayers could not claim this as an expenditure and as an allowable expenditure.
That's right.
Right. And if you couldn't claim, it means that it is better for you now to take advantage and then apply. I mean, I don't see the conditions here as too rigid. Pay what you owe. The interest and penalties on.
You are relieved.
You are relieved. And in your discussion of the interest and penalty, you were talking about something like a short payment or something. Can you speak to that?
Yes, it has to do with the triggering points for application of the provision that govern the penalty for the interest computation. Interest is charged where there is an underpayment of the tax. In that case, the amount that is to be paid is determined, but you underpaid.
Okay. That is, you pay less than the total amount. Okay.
That's, we call it short payment.
Okay.
Interest is also triggered when there is non-payment at all. In that case, we have a payment return without a payment.
Okay.
It creates a debt, a tax debt.
Okay.
There are also instances where interest can also be charged when the taxpayer underpays. So some underpayment, a short payment, they all come to the same point. Non-payment of tax, they also come in. And then we have delayed payment. That's delayed payment of tax. It will trigger the interest charge. And actually the interest regime is very punitive. So if you look at how the computation is supposed to be done in accordance with the section 71, it says that you must accelerate the statutory rate. That is, the acceleration here means it's not just the rate, you increase the rate by 25%. And it's going to be compounded on a monthly basis. So it's as though...
So it's not palatable.
It's not palatable. So this is the best time for you to apply and save yourself of interest that will otherwise not serve as deductible expenditure.
Thank you. Mr. Fiajo, from what he has just said, it appears, I mean, everybody has to be in a hurry to file or to apply for this. More so, I think you have a few days, right? Almost a month, right?
Yeah.
So there's enough time.
Yeah.
And from the discussion, it doesn't look like when I apply, I should get my response before the 30th of September. The most important thing is that I am diligent, to borrow your word, in completing the form and try and file on or before the 30th of September, right?
Yes.
And it is better to file early so that your 30 days of waiting to get the feedback from the Commissioner General starts counting, right? And it is never advisable to pretend as if you haven't heard of the amnesty and or as usual to try and wait, there's time to wait, that kind of syndrome. It's not helpful, right? Viewers, we will be going on a commercial break at this point, and this is your favorite program, Time with the Tax Law, on the GRA TV. We are currently discussing the interpretation of the Penalty and Waivers Act of 2021 Act 1065. We will be back.
GRA goes cashless. We have made it more convenient for you to pay your taxes. From 1st July 2021, make all cash and check payments to the bank or on www.ghana.gov.gh or via mobile money on *222# on all networks. Pay digitally any time of the day, anywhere you are. For more information, visit gra.gov.gh or call our toll-free number 0800 900 110. Ghana Revenue Authority. Our taxes, our future.
You are welcome back, viewers, cherished viewers. You are welcome to this edition of your favorite program, Time with the Tax Law, on the Ghana Revenue Authority TV, GRA TV. Today's discussion has been on the topic, the interpretation of the Penalties and Waiver Act of 2021, Act 1065. And we have had a substantial discussion, and we are moving to the next segment of it. We want to look at a few practical